Yeah, I was telling him that she asked a big question, or a big question. It's not the big question. Is there a God? Sort of thing. I wonder if there's really a God. Well, that's up to him to decide and figure out for himself. His dad and I'll love him regardless, because we're not bigots. Like my relatives, some of them. The other ones are different kinds of bigots, not religious bigots. Or just shitty people in general, pretending to be nice. Got some of those. Probably have some genuinely nice ones in there that I just haven't met, because I actually haven't met most of my family. Yeah. Really genuinely have just never met them. They've heard about me, though, a bunch of stuff that isn't even true, and that's the thing. Most of them, it's just rumor mill baloney. Baloney. I don't know most of my relatives. The state made sure that I wouldn't, and then my grandmother made sure that that wouldn't be remedied. So, yeah. Anyway, religion isn't something. Religion, lack of religion, just having a spirituality, none of it means anything in this house. It's just, well, except to the person it means something to. Meaning, it's between, Chris, it's between you and whatever you believe. And guess what, honey?
What?
It's not important if you don't know what you believe tomorrow, or even the next day. You're just 7 going on 8. You don't gotta have the answers to the universe.
But I know there's like over 1,000 people in the world.
Oh, there's a lot more than 1,000. There's more than 1,000 people in this city. The look on his face. There are cities with millions of people, Chris.
What?
We live in a huge city. There are states smaller than the city of Phoenix. Uh-huh.
Okay. I bet there's one in South America. Eastern. No.
How about we discuss that after you're done with your schoolwork, and then you can pull up the map and show me what you're talking about.
It's the one that's like spelled like zombie, but it's not
Okay, let's...
But it's not actually...
I don't think it's actually bigger than Zimbabwe, dear.
Simba.
But it's bigger than Connecticut.
Connecticut?
Yeah, that's where I was born. Connecticut is very small. It's a very small state. Now do your schoolwork.
Could Phoenix eat Connecticut?
Yes, Phoenix could probably eat Connecticut, yeah. There you go. Yeah. So, yeah, he's locked out a bunch of games, but yeah, totally asking the big questions there. But it really is something that, you need to find for yourself. I actually agonized over it a lot because there were so many people telling me what to believe. And in the end, I ended up falling back on something that my mom taught me as a kid. And it was basically, do you believe it? Well, my mom was very accepting. It's funny how pagans are so different in that in that it's more of a, well, what do you believe? So I came up to my mom and I asked if Santa Claus is real. Well, do you believe that he's real? If I said yes, her answer was, well, then he's real. And if I said no, okay, then he's not real. It's all dependent on what you believe. Now, to be fair, that's an exercise that is acknowledgement of belief and basically teaching you to decide for yourself based on, what you run into in your life. Eventually, all kids grow out of believing in Santa Claus. The evidence is just there. There's no evidence to support the existence, and eventually we all catch our parents. So, yeah. Gives I caught mommy kissing Santa Claus a whole new meaning, doesn't it? Santa Claus was dad. So
Santa Claus is daddy? Oh.
well, remember?
Come back here.
Honey, do your schoolwork. Dad's at work.
I know.
We've already had that discussion. We also had the now don't go around telling all your friends because obvious reasons it may explode in your face. Some people don't like to let go of that sort of thing, and that's true even in childhood. You may end up smacked or something. Then again, I don't really think you should live in fear of that necessarily, but you really shouldn't poke the dragon on purpose. So, not unless you're sure that isn't going to happen. Not that I really was, okay, fine. Yeah. Passing on the lessons of life.
Dragons are not real. Oh.
There are people who believe otherwise.
I know dragons are not real.
Do you really? Are you sure?
Yes.
Alright then.
I'm not learning about no dragons, so... But I know they can breathe fire.
Are you sure?
Yes, they go fly and breathe fire.
What if I told you that there was a real life thing that people think that the stories of dragons were based on? And that the thing could not breathe fire? One of these days, whenever you're older, we'll learn about the superstitions and how they shaped the legends of dragons in different parts of the world, okay? But there's going to be parts, it's kind of guesswork because we don't really have enough information about it. But there's some evidence that, a lot of our legends come from fossils and stuff. Like the unicorn.
I bet it's not real.
Aww.
But I wish it was.
You wish it was? Well, I wish dragons were real.
Why?
Are you kidding me? Breathe fire upon my enemies.
I'm afraid they might burn the house down.
I know. But also because the descriptions are so beautiful. Why wouldn't I want a giant flying, fire-breathing lizard to exist?
You reminded me of Big Hero 6.
Alright, schoolwork. Now. So, you get to that point whenever you're like, and then there are the more complicated things, like how some people believe that things exist, but on a spiritual level, not necessarily a physical one, and that it's more a manifestation of sorts. that we can only really comprehend in our minds, and maybe not even then. There are different beliefs about a lot of different things. And if you teach a kid what to believe, then they won't know what they believe. They'll just repeat what you've told them. And sooner or later, that causes its own sort of spiritual crisis. It's actually why a lot of atheists won't hear them talk much about paganism. You'll definitely hear them rag on the Abrahamic religions. Mostly because the Abrahamic religions just kind of want them to cease to exist. And rag on them, and lie on them, and they don't have any vow of harming none like we do. So, certain pagan religions do. What?
May I please go use the bathroom?
Go. The only reason why he has to ask right now is because he was playing in it earlier. So for a little while, he has to ask when he's doing his schoolwork, and then he'll be fine. So he'll go back to just going, and then we'll keep doing this until he stops playing in the freaking bathroom. So, yeah. Oh, found a group for homeschoolers. There are some field trips coming up. I'm hoping that I can talk to the doctor and we can start the radiation therapy after his birthday, or at least after the field trips. And also, if you throw fits like you did this morning again, you will not be going on that field trip.
Okay.
Tempe is a long ways away.
Tempe?
We're not going to the Tempe library for that meetup with other homeschoolers and their kids.
Wait. Oh.
And doing all those fun activities.
Oh no.
If you're not behaving. I'm not taking you there acting like a brat, especially since 2.5 hour bus ride.
Oh my.
We're gonna have to pack a lunch and all that.
Oh,
Yeah.
bet.
Yeah. Do your schoolwork.
It's beginning.
So, it wasn't anything like what it used to be. Years ago, he just whined a lot and went to the corner a bunch of times. Kept on saying no, didn't want to do his schoolwork, It was a normal bad day that a normal kid would have. Remember, we're having leftover lasagna tonight. And I'm gonna make my garlic bread. So if you want some of that garlic bread, remember, little boys who throw fits and don't do their schoolwork don't get none of my special bread. My rolls. Hey, I gotta have my leverage somewhere. I've actually been able to do a lot more. I'm hoping to work on my stomach muscles before they start the radiation therapy as well. I know it probably won't be much, all things considered, and with how fast they want to start this, but there's a lot I'm hoping to get done before it starts. Mostly because things got that bad. So, yeah. I'm still pretty sore. I've been doing a lot of walking. And a lot of different things. Now that the muscles are actually building up the way that they're supposed to, and I'm not just fighting an uphill battle just to not lose the muscle and gain a bunch of fat, I'm not just exercising not to gain weight. I'm also gaining weight, which is weird. I'm also losing it. It's fluctuating. About the same. My thyroid sucks. This isn't gonna fix my thyroid. So, It's also not going to make any doctor, literally any doctor, actually want to take it seriously, figure out when, where, and how it fluctuates so that we can better treat it. They just want to throw a thyroid medication at it and not care whenever it causes more problems. Because they're not paying attention to it. They just want to test it every few months. But the thing of it is that whenever you do that, they wouldn't have discovered that I had it in the first place if a couple of my doctors hadn't effed up and tested it. I mean, I think 2 of those tests were actually like within the same week or 2. They were all in the same month. No, wait. I think there was one that wasn't there in the same month. I'm not sure. I think it was like the month before or something. And the thing of it is that my thyroid fluctuates too quickly for that to be literally any good. So you can't just test it every 3 to 6 months. You have to actually have a closer eye on it. Even to like just get an idea of how it fluctuates. And nobody wants to do that. And they don't want to listen to me either, so I have to find one that at least is going to listen to me. I would like, though, if they would figure it out. I wouldn't even mind if it became like part of a research project, as long as they weren't like shoehorning a bunch of kids in state care, because I went through that. The only one allowed to turn me into a guinea pig these days is me. I will never be okay with it, because there is no power balance. There is no one who protects them. Those kids, the state just blindly agrees to things. There's no one protecting them. That's not okay. So anyway, I wouldn't actually mind having it be part of some sort of, I don't know, someone actually wanting to do legitimate research. Not, I'm going to decide what I'm going to find, and then I'm going to try and just find the evidence for that. No, actual, honest to goodness, how does this work? What influences this? Let's look at your history and see if there's an actual thing that causes this. Besides just genetics, is there something there? Because they think it might be genetics, but they're not exactly. Like, there could also be other stuff. Hashimoto's hasn't been discovered for that long. They don't actually know a whole hell of a lot about it. So I was just, like, I wouldn't even mind that if the doctor was like, you know what, I want to do this. I'd just be like, okay, as long as you're not trying to put me on a bunch of medications that are really just going to cause me more damage, as long as you're listening to me and not doing what was done in the past, trying to cut me open just to dissect me, I'm okay with that. As far as just monitoring it to learn more about it, I would be okay with that. There are limits, of course, obviously. Reasonable ones. But I wouldn't mind working with the doctor so that they could monitor, the way that the thyroid fluctuates. Or what causes it. Of course, there are some arguments that diet can also cause it. And I have actually noticed that eating or drinking certain things does cause it to go deep. So being told I have to drink a bunch of cranberry juice, I know that drinking this consistently, the way that I'm being told to, to try and prevent like certain infections while I'm going through radiation therapy, that's gonna be fun. Because I cut back on that like severely. Sitting there staring off into the distance is not doing your schoolwork, Chris. You're on a time limit.
I was wanting to tell you something.
No, you want to delay doing it. we've reached the end of that. It's time to sit down, hunker down, and do your schoolwork. And I was actually just thinking about just coming up with like a week of no schoolwork. And then, he decided to drive me absolutely ape this morning. So I was just like, well, I didn't actually... He drove me crazy. That's what it means. So, the fits, the go to the corner, that was not a great morning for me. Then I'm like, if he's doing fits because he doesn't want to do his schoolwork, I can't just say, a week of no schoolwork. Because that would be rewarding naughty behavior, wouldn't it, Chris?
Mm-hmm.
Can't do the whole summer because then he would drive me nuts. There is no summer vacation when you're homeschooled.
What?
Everything is a learning experience.
Even on summer break, still school?
You didn't even notice.
My summer break.
If you want a summer break, you get through this week without any more fits.
Okay, then the rest of them until
Then I'll give you a week.
a week.
Honey, your old classmates are already on summer break.
So no, but I want.
Summer break at school came into play because people had to go home. Because it used to be that everybody was all farmers. Or at least most people were. And everybody had to go home and help out on their parents' land. Or on the land that their parents helped to work with other people. If their parents were farmhands. They had to go home, help harvest the crops and all that. Help with the planting. That's why there's a spring break too. There's a spring break, a summer break, and a fall break, and a winter break. The winter break is for holidays. But the rest of them, those are all for different stages of planting, harvesting farms.
I'm also playing?
Nope.
Not playing.
Kids got off school so that they could work on the farm.
We don't live near a farm.
Nope, we don't have a farm. And we're covering stuff that you won't learn in public school. And also, your days are shorter than public school to begin with. All you have to do is do that work, and then you're done for the day. Have I ever made you sit there for 8 hours?
No way.
Well, those kids sit in there for 8 hours.
Or 7, depends on the
Yeah,
age.
you've been to public school. You know how it is. Do I make you do that?
No.
You get done your schoolwork, get done your assignments, and then we'll talk. So there's some planned field trips because I finally found a group online. There's another group that I found. I'm waiting to see if I've been accepted so that we can plan that stuff. There's also where you can have people meet and whatnot, set up events through email. There's an email networking group that I found. All this stuff hadn't come up in any searches beforehand. They just suddenly were there. They weren't, and then they were. Which is basically how I found most things. Just because I've been periodically, just whenever I have time, I search for these things. I don't have a lot of time, but yeah, I search for these things. And I've applied to groups and different stuff. Secular stuff is usually harder to find. It's just harder to find. Most of the homeschoolers that you hear about are religious. Or, teaching their children religion at home. Just like... Yeah, I want him to be able to think for himself and decide what he believes. And even adjust that belief based on facts if he needs to. I'm religious. His dad's religious. Jen's religious. Tim is sort of like a weird spiritual atheist. And then he used to be religious. And was even pagan for a while. The first time I've ever heard of an atheist that used to be pagan. And sometimes he still says kind of pagan-y things. And I'm just like, usually atheists go straight from being Christian or Muslim and all that. Sometimes he says things and I'm like, that's not atheist, right? That's non-religious. There's a difference. So, spiritual but non-religious. But he calls himself an atheist. And he likes to mess with theists in chat rooms. So, I'm just gonna respect his assertion and call him an atheist. He doesn't necessarily believe that there's a God of any shape or form. But he does have like a sort of spirituality. I don't know. He can define that however the hell he wants at this point. I'm far too aware. I studied things pretty deeply. And I tried to make myself Christian. It didn't work. I ended up, basically secretly being pagan while trying to make myself Christian. And trying to, undo things. And it didn't work. Because you can't force yourself to believe something you don't. But that's what I was taught, if you don't believe this thing, then you're a horrible person because you don't believe it. That actually has nothing to do with it. But it took me a while. It really did. Because I thought that there was just something wrong with me. And there are actually some of them who will claim that your beliefs and your religious beliefs are mental illness. I ran into that too. I had this one that asked me if I'd ever been baptized. Because I said yes. He said, well then, he basically said that because of that, then I was crazy and not actually wicked. That doesn't make sense. On an unrelated, hey!
What? Tongue in mouth?
Yes. Tongue in mouth, chin, not on table. Because you stop doing your schoolwork whenever you do that. And, I grew up knowing. I know what is taught about pagans because, it was shoved down my throat too. But also, on a slightly unrelated note, but also kind of related, there was also this girl, I think that I was utterly bonkers in high school. Because my grandmother, basically threatened her life. Because I guess she knew somebody or knew somebody who knew somebody in the library or something. And got back to her that I talked to her and she was a known pagan. I think she was Wiccan? Something like that. I don't know if she necessarily followed the path of harm none. I don't know. Because I've since learned that a lot of people call themselves that and don't actually follow it. They just think that pagan religions in general are. There's a lot of misconceptions about a lot of different things. There's a divide or 20 between new age and old age. And, I call it old traditionals because old age makes it sound like we're all just a bunch of crones. But old traditionals follow it as it was passed down directly. The new age stuff, the neo-pagans of the different paths, they follow the Reconstruction. Yeah. It's as weird as it sounds. It's kind of like how Christians follow a reconstruction of Judaism. And if you're aware or have studied literally anything out of the old texts that the Jewish follow and believe, and all that, and the originals and all that still exist. Basically, if you studied literally any of that, you know how different that is. Well, neo-pagans and old traditionals are kind of like that. It's like Christians are what they think Jewish is, and Jewish people and what it actually is. Oh, and also how Christians seem to think like that because they're actually taught this, that the scrolls that nobody can actually prove that what's in the Bible can be disproved because, oh my God, the scrolls were destroyed so much. A lot of things have been destroyed, but there actually is a lot of stuff that still exists, that you can still study, that people have translated to make it easier for the people to study. And there are actually vivid discussions in entire communities about, even just a single word in the text and what it means and why it means that and the cultural context of the time. And, people get really in depth because